Good morning. Thank you for being here. I know you may be a little disappointed. Nathan's got me teaching 4 of these classes, and I was supposed to teach last week, and he and Lindy had some change of plans. They're actually, part of the reason they're in Arkansas this week is to celebrate J.D. Cowboy's 5th birthday. And I think when he taught this class the first time, J.D. was 2. And they were having a pretty interesting conversation, a pretty interesting time in a restaurant down in San Antonio. I'm going to apologize in advance because my only class material for this is the series of discs that were made when the class was done the first time. And so when you prepare for class number 3 and then you don't teach it, and he does, you're not sure if he rolled some of 4 into 3 or 3 into 4, and even when you go back and review, it's hard to tell. So if you get a lot of repeat stuff today, I want to apologize. I hope it's meaningful to you. Nathan starts his class every time by saying, this is not a self-help class. This is not a psychology class. I'm certainly not a psychologist. He would at least qualify in that area, being able to do psychological counseling. But it is a Bible class, and I'm fascinated with the topic and how much it's talked about in the Bible, the idea of fear. Nathan mentioned in one of his classes, and I just have to tell this one quick story. I'm going to try to incorporate his story into my lesson today, but I have a lesson about fear, give you some idea of how just terror is handled sometimes. Sometime back, Jill was in the balloon business. She did balloons, and she could stuff things down in balloons, and she could make balloon bouquets and stuff. And one night we had gone to bed, and we heard a noise at the front of the house. Could have been a cat, could have been a raccoon, could have been a burglar. And so Mr. Brave got up to address the issue. Now, I can't even remember what I was thinking I was going to do if I encountered this, whatever it was. I was, in my mind, I'm probably thinking, I'm hoping it's a cat and I can shoo it off, or at least tell Jill it was a cat that made the noise or whatever. And there's a little walkway. Our bedroom is here, and then you walk around, and the entrance to the house is right there. And our dining room is off to one side. Well, Jill had made a bouquet and set it kind of close to the walkway between the door and the entry to our living room. And as I walked past, guess what moved out behind me? The balloons. Do y'all remember the Andy Griffith Show? Remember Barney? Barney Fife. I was looking for my bullets, Ange. My knees got weak, and I realized how bad it would have been if it had really been a burglar. My flight or fight instincts turned into mush. And poor Jill would have been there to defend herself, whatever. But we're not talking about those kinds of things. God's given us a lot of built-in warning systems. Our human bodies are just amazing creations. And each time it's done again, it's done just as well or better. And there are greater and lesser degrees of acuity in certain areas for each of us. But don't we have amazing bodies that talk to us and tell us how we're doing? As I get older, I become more sensitive to those things. But the bottom line is, it's an honor to get to teach this class. And I was able to attend the class when Nathan first taught it. As a matter of fact, it's a little embarrassing to hear myself talking, in the audience when he's teaching. But I became very aware of the important role that fear plays in my life, or that it should play. and became aware of the kinds of fear and sources of fear that should not control me. That's not to say that I have conquered all of my fears since Nathan taught this material, nor is it to say that my lack of fear in my younger years has not impacted my life, and I doubt that I'm alone in that. But I do realize that I've made mistakes, some of which were a result of my lack of fear, especially of those things that can cause me harm or can cause people that I love harm. So just a quick review to get your synapses moving in the direction of the class. I want you to be reminded of the significance of J.D. Cowboy's sweet little spirit when Nathan brought him to this class number 4, the first time he taught it. He had told about being at a restaurant with him and the little guy, and Nathan was just burdened down with the meeting he was fixing to have. And so he spent a lot of this class number 4 explaining, because he had kind of left it in limbo at the end of class 3. And some of the guys came up to him and said, well, what happened? Are you broke? Are you bankrupt? You know, so he said he felt the need to. So he really explained. He explained the business he was in and the kinds of things he was trying to do, the kind of changes that were taking place in the industry that he served, he and his family, and the business that they had. And he was, really trying to think, I think, help us understand the depth of his absolute just being covered up with concern and fear over this meeting, because this guy he was going to meet with, they had gotten in a situation where the funding of the program that they relied heavily on for their the services that they provide was being cut by 42%. Now, I don't know how many of y'all could take a 42% cut right now. That's a little difficult, I think. And so that was weighing on him. He's the head of a household, and he's got to come up with some ideas. And they had decided that they would get into the medical psychology hospital, or a psychological hospital. They were going to get one. They ended up looking at 2. And so he talked about the kind of money that they were having to borrow and to look for. And how many of you have borrowed $1 million at one time? Let's just see a show of hands real quick. Go around the room here. I haven't gotten to one yet. Okay. Hopefully that kind of helps you a little bit with the fear he had, because they had some big commitments online. Nathan explained that, while he wasn't poor growing up, they didn't have any money. And he says that even to move out here, they sold a cow and a calf, I think, to get to Texas, to start the business they started when they came out here. And so he, losing my place here. So at the end of this lunch, he was going to a meeting with a guy. They had found a building that was going to work for their psychological hospital, and he said, it's amazing how much money you can spend. He said, a budget for a psychological hospital was about $170,000 a day. And so when you look at that can accumulate some pretty serious debt pretty quickly. So he's got this huge burden that's on him, and here's this little guy. Hey, Pop, can I have some more chips? Give me some more chips, Pop. Let me sit in your lap, Pop. Bounce me on your knee, Pop. Let's do. Oh, and he'd laugh, and he'd enjoy it. And you know what? It was okay. Nathan didn't mind. And I think Nathan's point in telling us that story was, even though he had this huge cloud over him, he had all these concerns that were real and that had to do with his own self-worth, And that's what we're going to talk about some today, because we're talking today about fear scaring us to death. And that's really the bottom line on all of our fear. When we take fear and we take it to its final place, unchecked, unsupported by our faith in God, we're all afraid of dying. And so he didn't mind all the questions, asking all the questions over and over and over again. He didn't mind the continual bantering. And J.D. Cowboy didn't understand. He didn't know that Pop was terrified about something. But he didn't care what Pop was going through. That had nothing to do with him. He was oblivious. Look that word up. As far as he knew, there was not another thing in the world going on, and certainly nothing more important than what he and his Pop had going on, and that was fine with him. J.D. Cowboy just wanted more time and more attention from Pop. And you know what? It didn't matter to Nathan either. Why? Why didn't it matter? Why do you think it didn't matter to Nathan? I mean, he could have said, J.D. Cowboy, I just can't deal with you right now. Go sit with your mama. Why didn't it matter? Because Nathan loved that baby. Because Nathan idolized that baby. I don't know, some of you guys are not familiar with the phenomenon, or who've not experienced both hoods from the driver's seat. But I got to tell you, grandfatherhood is fatherhood on steroids times 10. I get an amen to that? I got to tell you, they're just not much better. Jill and I spent a couple of days this week out in Midland, and we had 4 of ours there, and we just drank them in the whole time. We watched some volleyball games. Volleyball's not my favorite sport. But when my granddaughters are playing, I can drive 8 hours one way to watch a volleyball game and then spend the night and stay all day the next day and watch another one the next night. And grandfatherhood pales in comparison to God the fatherhood, doesn't it? So, it must be the way it is with God toward us. Our God is our Father. He wants to hear our requests. Nothing's too trivial for God. You can't ask too many times. Do we ask for the wrong stuff? Yes. Do we ask for too much? Yes, we do. So maybe it's okay to be afraid of reaching beyond anything we expect to be able to do. That was kind of Nathan's feeling about his approach to life, to get away from eastern Tennessee and to go beyond those mountains he could see behind his house and to do things. See, he's got that kind of drive. And it's okay. Maybe it's okay to ask ourselves what we would do if we weren't scared. Maybe it's okay to set goals for ourselves and drag our families into it and experience fear. Especially when we're bolstered by the assurance that if we walk with God, God will walk with us. And maybe we don't have to be afraid. Romans 8:31 and 32. If you want to turn there, I'm going to read it from my printed form here. What then shall we say in response to these things? Is God for us? Who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? How's your daily Bible reading going? I hope it's going well. And I want to encourage you to stay with that practice every day of your life as long as you can make it happen. I believe it has changed and is continuing to change my life. And coupled with the wonderful Bible teaching that comes from our pulpit and our Bible classes, I feel like I'm growing spiritually every day. And I hope and pray that you are too. I'm approaching 69 years of age. It's about time. I want to read a passage that came from our Bible reading this morning. You're going to think, no, Bradley, you staged this. But I didn't. It's awesome to me how many times what's going on in my life comes out of the Scriptures the day I'm reading that passage. Isn't that amazing? I think God has something to do with that. See, that's one of the things that Nathan struggles with is by the way, I know you're on the edge of your seat, and I'm going to go ahead and just give you some relief. The Ingrams are not bankrupt, okay? They're good to go. But a kind of a miracle happened. He didn't ever call it that, but I call it that. I call it a miracle. Because he goes to this meeting, and he's meeting with a guy who they've kind of committed themselves to this hospital thing, and they've got this looming debt, and they're trying to get certificated, and they do get their certification, and guess what? It's the wrong one. And so they go to the state, and they say, we need the right one, and the state says, you know what? We're kind of understaffed right now. We're not doing that. Okay. I own a hospital. I can't get certified. I've got a payroll. I can't provide services. Is this getting crazy? What? This is just getting kind of beyond what else can go wrong, right? So he's meeting with this man who had actually bought this building the year before for twice as much as Nathan and Lindy had to pay for it. Don't ask me how that works. But his renter backed out on him, so he let it go back, and that's how Lindy and Nathan got it. And Nathan was meeting with him to see if he would buy it. What are the odds you're going to give him to run into somebody that's going to do that? How do you think Nathan was feeling about the possibility that something good could even happen, much less that something overwhelmingly more than he ever expected would happen? The guy wanted the building and paid him twice as much and did all the renovations to make it usable as a hospital and leased it back to him. They'd gotten down to the point where when they turned the loan down on the building, the lady liked them so much and looked at their numbers and said, these are good numbers. We'll just leave this $250,000 line of credit open for you. And Nathan said that made it where we could get from December to March. And then this guy comes back, buys the building, does all the renovations, and leases it to him. Could that happen, really? Do you think that Nathan went to that meeting thinking, you know what, this guy is going to not only buy the building, he's going to pay twice as much as we paid for it, and then he's going to renovate it, and that doesn't happen, does it? Well, Nathan struggles a little bit with whether or not God did that. He doesn't not believe that God's working in his life, and he doesn't not believe that God does those kinds of things, but he's still a little bit cautious about God answering prayers that way. Why would he be cautious about that? Because people pray every day and don't get exactly what they want, right? Am I right? Do you get everything you want every day the way you want it when you pray? Lord, help my teenage boy to make good decisions today. Okay, maybe not. I'm just trying to think of some things that you might be worried about or have fear of. I think about my parents letting me learn how to drive, living in a town that was at 9,000 feet elevation, so that if you went to the show, you went off a mountain that was 4,000 foot elevation drop in 16 miles. And then you came back up that same mountain. And if you dated someone from Mayhill, you drove another 18 miles in the mountains down to take that person home, and then you came back. You put 120 miles on a car just to go on a movie date. I wonder if they lived in fear. Nathan and Lindy's huge cloud was taken away. And I want to tell you that I have a strong faith that God had everything to do with that. And Nathan does too. He just wants to be cautious about saying, hey, God will always answer your prayers the way you ask him to, because he doesn't. He didn't in this case, did he? Nathan would have never thought his answer would have been as good as it is. That's what I'm saying. Even for Nathan, it was better than he would have even thought of it, of the answer being. So, where are we then? Well, Nathan says this about those kinds of experiences, that he absolutely understands that he has grown immensely when he was being afflicted. Is being in fear being afflicted? Does that qualify? Well, I think it does. I think it qualifies a whole lot. Maybe a lot of the kind of affliction that we have to endure in this life, with health issues and the loss of loved ones and those kinds of things that loom over us in this temporal life that we live in. He's not at all sure that God was causing it or it was a natural result of stretching beyond what even he thinks is capable of achieving, but he knows that affliction, which sometimes takes the form of worry or fear, is immensely good for him. God will never give you more than you can stand. 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Nathan says he's grateful for the afflictions he's been asked to endure, and fear of not knowing what outcomes to things we think are most important to us can be the periods in our life when we grow spiritually the most. We have to recognize that we're a physical body with a spiritual and an eternal soul. And we must realize that we're in God's hands. I've got a statement here that Brother Mark made sometime while Nathan was putting his material together, and I think it's a very valid statement, Mark. I think it's very affirming. People who walk with God a long time and have been through a whole lot of circumstances believe in him more than when they started, because he has demonstrated himself to be faithful. Are we letting God be a part of our lives? Are we letting God show himself to be faithful to us in our everyday life? Oh, I can't tell you how many times Jill and I talk about how blessed we are as a family, how absolutely overwhelmingly blessed we are. It's kind of scary sometimes that God takes such good care of us. But we give God the credit for the good things that happen in our lives. We try real hard to be thankful and grateful for the things that God has done for us. And That's what God calls on us to do, is to be thankful and to be grateful. We live with a faithful God. When we step out into the darkness, God puts that stone under our foot. When we step again, He puts that other stone out there. We're going to take risks. And men, you more than the ladies are built to reach out and to do more, and to reach out and to see what the next thing that needs to be done to take care of our family is. So we step into space, and God puts a rock there for me to step on. I step again, God gives me a rock to step on. It's like, listen to this. Give us this day, what? Our daily bread. We need to live in that world. We need to live in that world and depend on God to take care of us, and trust our God to take care of us. That's a different aspect of fear. It's one thing to believe in God. It's another thing to believe in God and trust in His promises. That's why Nathan became so interested in learning how to keep from being scared to death. Humans have the ability to project thoughts into the future and to pretend we know what's going to happen. Then we think, well, it might be terrible. Mark, let's go on a picnic Thursday. Oh, it might rain Thursday. It might rain Thursday. Is that true? Is Thursday a good day to plan a picnic? Well, what's the other truth? It might not rain Thursday. We're pretty good at weather prediction. We were talking about that over here a while ago. But what if God is in control and I can trust Him for the outcome? Problem is, I might be trusting Him to answer my prayer the way I want it answered, i.e., give me some more money so I can live past next month. And what if He doesn't? What if He doesn't want to? What if that's not the right thing for us? What if we're praying amiss and that prayer doesn't get answered the way we want it to? What then? What do you do? What's your response to that? And some of our prayers are serious, serious prayers. The truth is, many have prayed in this world and gone broke. Many have prayed and their child died. Many have prayed and they died. So where do I get the peace to keep fear from scaring me to death? Biblical promises tell us that you won't ever be able, or won't ever be given more than you can stand. We read that scripture a minute ago. That's a big one. That's a big one. Do you believe that? That no matter what, you won't be given more than you can stand up to, can make it through? Like I said, Nathan says he can honestly tell you that it has been immensely good that he's been afflicted. He's learned lessons at 51 years. That's how old he was when he first did this lesson, that he hadn't learned until then. Should be encouraging to the young people. Do I really believe God, or do I believe Him when He does what I want Him to do? Do I believe in Him? I can't say I feel terrible. I can't say I feel scared to death. I'm just grateful. I think that's it. If you can be grateful today, then you're okay. Let's talk a little bit about the process of fear. He had a little game that he had on an overhead, and I never did get to see it, so I didn't try to emulate it. But let's just go to the idea of being scared of something. And let's just use Nathan's example, scared of being broke. Is anybody in here scared of being broke? I'm scared of being broke. I'm not sure I make the right decisions all the time to prove that I'm scared of being broke, but I'm scared of being broke. So what are the ramifications? What's the risk of going broke? What are the risks? Help me here. Let's go down this path. You have doubts? Yeah, but what are the impact of me going broke? Let's talk about the real earth-shattering impact of me going broke. Could lose my house. Jill and I would have to find another place to live. It affects my whole family, doesn't it? There's kind of a cloud now. If I default on a loan, then I'm in debt and have debts that I can't pay. I'm liable for things. It's embarrassing. That's a big one, isn't it? Isn't it? Who wants to be embarrassed? Let's see a show of hands. I mean, really embarrassed. We don't want to be embarrassed. Usually we're embarrassed because we did something we shouldn't have done or didn't do something we should have done. That's what brings embarrassment about. And then we have to face the people that it impacted. How are we doing on time? We're good? Okay. I'll watch for it. I don't have a chronometer up here. I don't have any way to tell where I am on time. So let's just keep going down the path. I have to change my lifestyle. Move out of the house. Move into an apartment. If I can afford an apartment. Might move into a car. People are doing that all the time. My family suffers. My future is hurt. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm not worth anything. I'm no good. I'm discouraged. I'm not fit to live. Someone should kill me. It's a little dramatic. People go there, don't they? People go there. People go down that path. And so, ultimately, what happens to them is fear does what? Scares them to death. Folks, when you find yourself living in fear, you need to do something to fix it. You need to if your fear is being caused by someone else, it needs to be addressed. If it's something that you're doing to yourself, you need to find a path where you can deal with it. And I believe that God's Word can help you more than any other, what do you call it, therapy. We need to trust God. During the class, Brother Elton asked the question, was Job afraid? Do you think Job was afraid? You think he was scared? Do you think he was? I do. You bet. What happened to him? What happened to his family? Children gone, houses gone, animals gone, all of his wealth, all of his worldly wealth, gone. Everybody that walked through the door had bad news. What did he do? What did he do? He did what any red-blooded believer in God would do, is he put himself in sackcloth and he sat on a stack of ashes and he scraped the sores and all the things that were being done to him to make him afflicted. And he stayed with God. His wife, who just out of compassion came to him and said, Job, come on, baby. Enough's enough. Curse God and die. We've lost our children. We've lost our farm. We've lost our animals. We've lost everything. It's just you and me. And I give you permission to take your own life. 5, 10, 5, 10. To take your own life. And he didn't, did he? Because he trusted God. What happened to old Job? I don't know if you can say his prayers were answered, because his prayers were answered before Satan intervened in his life, weren't they? But even though Satan was able to do all of the things or cause all the things to happen that happened, God knew that Job was going to hang in there. He was going to do the right thing and trust him. If I have to be believing that everything has to turn out the way it would if I was doing it, then I have to learn this lesson over and over again, because I never get past the fear that it will turn out the way I would if it was me doing it. We got to get past that. We got to put it in God's hands and trust God. That's hard with family, isn't it? Especially when they kind of veer off to the left or even to the right too far. I'm not sure. That wasn't a political statement. It's hard sometimes to just trust God and to keep trusting God. I don't want to have to learn this lesson again, where every time I try to stick my neck out, and this is Nathan speaking, try something big, I have to be scared. I have to be believing, and I don't have to be scared, even if it kills me. Is that right? I don't have to be scared, even if it kills me. If you read Isaiah 61, just the first few verses, this is what Isaiah wrote hundreds of years before Jesus came. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners or the blind, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance for our God, to comfort all who mourn. Hundreds of years later, Jesus got up in a synagogue and he read that and he sat down, and what did he say before he sat down? Today, in your hearing, this has come to pass. Today, in your hearing, this has come to pass. Jesus is Lord. We live in that time. God has sent His salvation. We're going to be saved. Hebrews 2 and verse 14. Since the children have flesh and blood, He too shared in their humanity, so that by His death He might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. That's from God's Word. That's promise. That's for us. Let's learn to believe it like that. In 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 9, no eye has seen, nor ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love Him. What do you think? Paul said later, I'd rather go ahead and die. But it's better for you if I stay here. All of these are great promises. What if it's true that the day we die is better than the day we were born? 5? This is going so well. I'm going to give them 5 minutes off. What if it's true that the day we die is better than the day we're born? Let's live like that. Let's live with that in our mind and in our hearts, so that when the fear comes, we have the peace that passes all understanding. That's what Nathan wants to achieve with this series of lessons for the people that he loves the most in the world, his church family, the congregation that he worships with. He wants you to claim that peace that passes all understanding. Some of you have been through things that I cannot imagine. Jill and I deal with folks every day, and we are real careful to not say, "We know how you feel." That's not a good thing for people who have been through horrible losses and the kinds of things that happen in this world. The only answer is to let God truly, truly rule in our hearts and in our lives, and approach the things that make us afraid with God on our side. Thank you for coming. I hope it was worth your time. And just fair warning, I'm going to be the teacher next week, so if you want to plan a weekend vacation or something, it'd be a good time. Thank you for being here.